again, everyone. Happy New Year, and welcome back to SFF180, and the third and last of my videos listing my anticipated books for 2025. And this episode covers fantasy, 37 titles altogether. And once again, I am very grateful for the reception to my science fiction and horror episodes. These are a lot of work to make, mainly because I create too much work for myself, but the end results are worth it. Now, fantasy this year presented a number of challenges in assembling my list. First and foremost, filtering out all the romantasy. Sorry, everyone. But while I don't dislike a good fantasy novel with a strong love interest as part of the package, romantasy in particular, both in terms of its storytelling, which I just don't care for, and as a marketing category that has literally taken the genre over, well, to me, being from the South, it's a little bit like literary Spanish moss, all that stuff that gunks up the trees down here. I walk into a bookstore these days, and all the front tables are blanketed by these books with their sprayed artwork on the edges and the titles printed in those little curly-Q fonts. And hey, it's nice that there is a big enthusiastic readership for this stuff, and I'm happy that they are getting the books they like. But the way the publishing business works, where they see one kind of book selling, and so they just give up on almost everything else because they're chasing after the next low-effort bestseller, is depressing to me. It reminds me of the urban fantasy craze of the 2000s, where the racks were just taken over by all these little paperbacks that all looked the same and read the same and recycled the same tropes and formulas. So there was a greater challenge this year, finding more original, creative, and story-driven fantasy for 2025. But there's still a lot to look forward to. Now, as for omissions, there are many sequels, second and third books and trilogies that I haven't included. There is at least one glaring omission that you'll notice, the new book by a hugely popular writer whose work just does not excite me. But overall, I think you might find a lot of work of real interest here. So, as we dive in, please remember, all release dates are highly tentative and subject to change without notice. And the fit for the video today is Ban the Fascists, Save the Books. Now, I am going to begin my list with a series entry here because I just can't overlook a conventional boy, the 13th and I believe second to last book in Charles Stross's wonderfully fun, tongue-in-cheek series, The Laundry Files, which is all about the laundry, Britain's elite anti-occult special branch. Now in this one, Derek, a middle-aged D&Der who has lived in the laundry's Camp Sunshine since the 80s, escapes and ends up at a gaming convention, of course, where his talent for recognizing magic activity helps him uncover a LARPing group attempting to conjure their deity into existence under the cover of role-playing. A novel of vampires, werewolves, and sorcerers, Lightfall is the debut epic fantasy by Ed Crocker on January 14th for fans of J. Kristoff's Empire of the Vampire and Richard Swan's The Justice of Kings. Exploring politics and class struggles in a stratified vampire city where the lower classes are only allowed the weakest blood, a palace maid attempts to rise above her station by investigating the murder of a prince, which leads her to team up with the Leeches, a group of rebel maids who gather blackmail material against the lords, and their investigations soon point to a much more vast conspiracy. On January 21st, we're getting a book that's actually a re-release, but it's a book that never really got a fair chance when it initially came out in 2011. Miserere, An Autumn's Tale, is the story of exiled exorcist Lucien Negru, who abandoned his lover Rachel to hell to save the damned soul of his sister Katerina. But Katerina doesn't want to be saved. Now a prisoner in his reviled sister's home, Lucien is being used as a tool to help fulfill Katerina's wicked dreams, unleashing the demons of the underworld to wage a war above. Now when it came out, Miserere was buried in the initial collapse of Nightshade Books, but now the author has done extensive revisions, including a whole lot of improved character development, so hopefully the book will finally find its audience with this reissue. Wrapping out January, on the 28th, Orbit releases The Outcast Mage by Annabelle Campbell. Now, in this glittering debut fantasy, a mage bereft of her powers must find out if she is destined to save the world or destroy it. Perfect for fans of Andrea Stewart, James Islington, and Samantha Shannon. February 4th starts out the month in an exciting way with Grave Empire by Richard Swan. Now, this is the first volume in a sequel series set in the world of his Empire of the Wolf trilogy, about 200 years into the future. Now, Swan describes this as a dark, epic flintlock fantasy, which goes something like The Last of the Mohicans meets Blair Witch Project meets Little Mermaid meets 28 Days Later. Yeah, I had to take all that in myself. Death magic, epic gunpowder warfare, apocalyptic stakes, mermen who wield great white sharks as living weapons. And so I guess all that should tell you all you need to know. Now, by the way, keep an eye out on the channel because in January I will finally be posting my complete trilogy review video for the Empire of the Wolf, and I'm very excited about that. Now, one last note about Grave Empire, only the UK is getting a hardcover edition. I mean, come on, Orbit US, why you gotta do it sturdy like that? Okay, don't worry, Orbit, I still love you, and I'll prove it because here comes some more of your books. On February 25th, we're getting Green Teeth by Molly O'Neill, who is described as an outstanding new voice in cozy fantasy. And I know that I've kind of cringed at the cozy thing before, but happily, Green Teeth does not sound toothless. The title character is a lake-dwelling creature with needle-sharp teeth who rescues a witch tossed into the lake by local villagers, influenced by a malevolent new pastor. So clearly there is the timely theme of xenophobia and intolerance going on here, and I do like the concept of misunderstood monsters. Moving into March, the 4th is a busy day with 3 noteworthy titles. M.R. Carey is back with Once Was Willem, an enthrallingly dark medieval fantasy, a fable of twisted folklore, macabre magic, and the strangest of found families. Now, the description sounds like it's the memoirs of the undead title character who rose to defend a tiny British village in the 1100s, but also promises to reveal secrets about life and death, warning us, "You will not thank me." Also from Orbit on the 4th, David Dalgleish returns with The Radiant King, the first volume in a new trilogy called Astral Kingdoms. Now, this is the story of 6 immortal siblings who command radiance, the power of life and creation, and who keep its secrets from humanity to avoid worldwide cataclysm. But after centuries of peace, one of the siblings goes rogue and rejects their vow, anointing himself voice of father and spreading a new cruel faith across the land. Okay, so for this next book, I need a disclaimer or a confession, you might say. Now, how do I put this diplomatically? I am very much not a fan of This Is How You Lose the Time War. I get it. I'm a minority here, a heretic, but it is what it is. That being said, on March 4th, I am still eagerly looking forward to The River Has Roots, Amal El-Matar's first novella publication from Tor.com, mainly because I have read several of her short works, and so I know she's a really good storyteller, regardless of that book. It takes place in the small town of Thistleford, on the edge of Faerie, where the mysterious Hawthorne family tends and harvests the enchanted willows and honors an ancient compact to sing to them in thanks for their magic. But when Esther, one of the eldest daughters, rejects a forceful suitor in favor of a lover from the land of Faerie, not only her bond with her sister Isabel, but also their lives will be at risk. Yeah, it does kind of sound a bit romantic-y, but also, quite dark and sinister. Okay, so I know I already said I'm not including mini sequels, but I can't overlook The Tomb of Dragons on March 11th, the third and final volume in Catherine Addison's Chronicles of Ozreth trilogy set in the world of the Goblin Emperor, and wrapping up the saga of Thara Selahar, formerly known as the Witness for the Dead. Now, with that title gone, what will define him? Also on March 11th, Grace Curtis returns with Idlefire from Daw, It's an epic sapphic fantasy road trip inspired by The Fall of Rome, in which two characters, one trying to prove herself to her family, the other trying to rid herself of a curse, are set on the path to Nivella, a city once poised to conquer the world with the power of 1,000 stolen gods. Now the gates are closed, and the old magic slumbers. On April 8th, Tor.com releases Don't Sleep with the Dead. Sounds like good advice. But this is the companion novella by Neve Vo to her novel The Chosen and the Beautiful, the fantasy reimagining of The Great Gatsby. Now, in this standalone story, set on the eve of the Second World War, Nick Carraway, paper soldier and novelist, learns that, dead or not, damned or not, Jay Gatsby isn't done with him. Also on April the 8th, Hugo and Nebula winner Ai Jiang's short novel, A Palace Near the Wind, arrives from Titan, a richly inventive, brutal, and beautiful science fantasy novella in which the princess of a race of tree people must confront dark family secrets in her quest to stop the relentless expansion of human society into her realm. Now, early reviews are mixed, but I'm very curious to see how the story unfolds for myself. On April 15th, Orbit releases debut author Antonia Hodgson's The Raven Scholar, a masterfully woven and playfully inventive tale of imperial intrigue, cutthroat competition, and one scholar's quest to uncover the truth behind who murdered one of 7 contenders for the throne, untangling a web of deadly secrets that stretches back generations, all while competing against 6 warriors with their own dark histories and fierce ambitions. On April 22nd, Angry Robot releases the new novel by Kan Wong, Down in the Sea of Angels. In the year 2106, climate change has altered the world, transforming borders, cities, and socioeconomic structures. Additionally, a cosmic event known as the Bloom has awakened psionic abilities in a small percentage of the population. Now, this is described as an intense and thoughtful time-hopping dystopian fantasy where 3 individuals, psychically linked through time, fight enslavement, exploitation, and environmental collapse. 2 books on April the 29th, starting with City of All Seasons from Titan, a collaboration between Oliver K. Langmead and Aaliyah Whiteley. Now, it's about 2 cousins, Jamie and Esther Pike, trapped in mirror versions of the same city, one where it is perpetual summer and the other perpetual winter. As Jamie and Esther find a way to communicate across the divide, they set out to solve the mystery of what split their once unified city in 2, and what, if anything, might repair their fractured worlds. Yeah, it does sound more than a little Time War inspired, but I can also see vague hints of the city and the city here. Also on the 29th, Forge Books releases The Edge of Yesterday by Rita Woods, a haunting tale of time travel and finding yourself. Greer is a successful dancer whose career is sidelined by a sudden neurological disorder. Now she returns to Detroit, where she encounters a portal leading her a century back to 1925, where she meets Dr. Monty Gray, one of the city's most prominent black leaders in the fight for equality. But each visit Greer makes causes rips in the timeline, and she soon finds herself trapped in 1925 while Monty is forced into a deadly confrontation that changes the trajectory of his life. 3 titles on a busy May 6th, starting with a new novella by Neon Yang, Brighter Than Scale, Swifter Than Flame. Okay, so once again, this has a romantasy quality to it, but I like the central conflict. It's about Yeva, a dragon slayer who travels to Quanbao, a reclusive nearby kingdom where dragons are revered rather than hunted and feared. Now, her mission is to kill a dragon harbored within Quanbao's borders, but things get, you might say, complicated when she finds herself and the queen drawn to each other. Also on the 6th, finally, we get to the book that I know is at the top of a whole lot of readers' lists. Joe Abercrombie is back with The Devils, a new novel not set in the world of his first law stories. Now, naturally, it features a notorious band of anti-heroes on a delightfully bloody and raucous journey. And this one sounds like Joe's take on The Dirty Dozen, where Brother Diaz is sent on a holy mission, but his crew consists of unrepentant murderers, practitioners of ghastly magic, and outright monsters. The mission he is tasked with will require bloody measures from all of them in order to achieve its righteous ends. Sometimes holy work requires unholy deeds. And last but not least, on May 6th, literary and historical fantasy fans won't want to miss the new book by Nicole Jarvis, A Spell for Change, a sumptuous atmospheric historical fantasy set in post-World War I Appalachia. 3 outcasts with misunderstood magical gifts search for their place in the world while battling the dark forces that circle their community. This is described as perfect for fans of Catherine Arden and Susanna Clarke. On May 13th, Tor releases Anji Kills a King, the debut fantasy by Evan Lycum. Now, I understand that he's something of a big shot bookstagrammer. I confess I haven't been following him, but hey, congratulations. Now, this is about Anji, a castle servant who seizes an unexpected moment and murders the king. Now, running for her life from the biggest bounty anyone's ever had, Anji is found by the Hawk, a surly, aging swordswoman who has her own reasons for keeping Anji alive and out of the hands of her fellow bounty hunters, if only long enough to collect the reward herself. Also on the 13th, last year's Hugo winner Emily Tesh returns with The Incandescent from Tor. Dr. Walden is the director of magic at Chetwood School and one of the most powerful magicians in England. Among her duties, she must secure the school's boundaries from demonic incursions. But it's possible the entity Walden most needs to keep her school safe from is herself. 3 books on a very busy May 27th, starting with the steampunk fantasy mystery Death on the Caldera. The author is Emily Paxman. This one comes from Titan, and it's Murder on the Orient Express with witches. 3 royal siblings have booked passage on a luxury train back to their kingdom of Halgir, so the oldest can assume the throne. But when the engine is sabotaged, stranding the train on a caldera, bubbling with volcanic magic that triggers Sister Davina's latent witch powers, the siblings start to realize that they may be targets of a setup, as a mysterious killer starts picking off passengers. Also on the 27th, Tor releases the new short novel by Tochi Onyebuchi, Harmattan Season, a Chandler-esque hard-boiled fantasy noir set in a post-colonial West Africa. When a bleeding woman stumbles onto his doorway, only to vanish just as quickly, Private Eye Boubacar reluctantly finds himself enmeshed in the secrets of a city boiling on the brink of violence between French occupiers and indigenous factions vying for a chance to reclaim their lost heritage and abilities. And also on May 27th, top of the list for me, any year with a new Guy Gavriel Kay novel is going to be a good year, and Written on the Dark is another sweeping historical fantasy, a novel of love and war that brilliantly evokes the drama and turbulence of medieval France. 2 poets, one from the taverns and the other from the aristocracy, as well as an extraordinary young woman driven by voices within to try to heal the ailing king and help his forces in war, are all part of this elegant tour de force about power and ambition playing out amid the equally intense human need for art and beauty and memories to be left behind. Coming June the 3rd, Saga Press releases A Song of Legends Lost, the debut novel by M.H. Allende. The first volume of the Invoker trilogy, it draws on multiple pre-colonial non-Western cultures. In the 9 lands, only those of noble blood can summon the spirits of their ancestors to fight in battle. But when Temi, a commoner from the slums, accidentally invokes a powerful spirit, she finds it could hold the key to ending a centuries-long war. But not everything that can be invoked is an ancestor, and some of the spirits that can be drawn from the ancestral realm are more dangerous than anyone can imagine. On June the 10th, Titan Books releases a dark fairy tale by Helen Marshall, The Lady, the Tiger, and the Girl Who Loved Death, in which Irenda, a young woman in a war-torn country who has lost her mother in a devastating attack and whose grandmother has taught her how to tame death, joins a circus as part of an elaborate plan of revenge to bring justice into the world for herself and her family. Also on June 10th, Tor releases Kate Elliott's The Witch Roads, in which an arrogant prince, stranded on a land not his own, is assigned a minor deputy courier to guide him to his destination. But a man raised to ignore and despise the lower classes isn't going to be eager to follow advice from one of them. When the courier warns him not to enter the haunted spires, the prince doesn't heed her advice, and the man who emerges from the towers isn't the same man who entered. Now, this is the first book in a duology, and the sequel, The Nameless Land, is following very quickly on November 4th. 2 books on June 17th, starting with A Far Better Thing, the first Tor release by H.G. Parry. A fantasy pastiche on A Tale of Two Cities, it features Sidney Carton. From that book, Carton, I think that's how it's supposed to be. Anyway, as a young man stolen by the Fae as a child, who made him a mortal servant of the fairy realm. Now, he has a rare opportunity for revenge against the Fae and Charles Darnay, the changeling left in his stead. Shuttling between London and Paris during the Reign of Terror, generations of violence begetting violence lead him to a heartbreaking choice in the shadow of the guillotine. Also on June 17th, Wearing the Lion is the second novel by John Wiswell from Daw. Now in this one, John brings a humanizing and humorous touch to the Hercules story. Heracles dedicates all his feats to the goddess Hera, but she hates him for being one of Zeus's many random children. But she is racked by guilt after she kills Heracles' children in a moment of rage, and tries to distract him from his pursuit of revenge with monster-slaying quests. But Heracles is too traumatized to just go out and murder monsters, and so he ends up befriending and caring for them instead. Now, he's building his own unique kind of found family, one that just might lay siege to Mount Olympus. On June 24th, Orbit releases Mark A. Latham's The Last Vigilant. Set in a world where magic is forgotten, monsters lurk in the dark woods, and honorable soldiers are few, this utterly gripping epic fantasy tells the story of 2 flawed humans, an out-of-practice wizard and a hot-headed sergeant, who are thrust into the heart of a mystery that threatens to unravel their kingdom's fragile peace. Jumping ahead to August 5th, Daw will release The Mad Sisters of Aesi by Tashan Mehta, a stunning meta-fantasy about the power of stories, belief, and sisterhood in the vein of Susanna Clarke's Piranesi and Italo Calvino's If on a Winter's Night a Traveler. Now what you're looking at there is the overseas cover. The domestic cover has not been released yet. Now it's told from the alternating viewpoints of sisters Myung and Lala, the keepers and sole inhabitants of the impossible Whale of Babel, roaming within its cosmic chambers. Now when Myung flees the whale, she stumbles into a new universe full of people, shape-shifting islands, and argumentative ghosts, setting off on an adventure that will unravel the mystery that has confounded everyone for centuries, the truth about the Mad Sisters of Aesi. And you know, the more I read that synopsis, the more I think that there is probably a lot of Gormenghast influence here as well. On August 19th, Tor releases the newest from Charlie Jane Anders, Lessons in Magic and Disaster. A young witch teaches her mother how to do magic with very unexpected results in this relatable resonant novel about family, identity, and the power of love. Jamie is a young New England academic in training who also happens to be a witch, and she's been training her mother Serena in spellcasting to help overcome personal grief and come out of her shell. But Jamie doesn't know the whole story of what's happened to her mom years ago, and those secrets are leading Serena down a destructive path. Now, this next one is by a huge fan favorite author who, once again, I'm not really on board with, but I am cautiously adding this to the list because I am always open to having my mind changed and being proven wrong. In R.F. Kuang's Catabasis, releasing on August 26th, 2 academic rivals from Cambridge must travel to hell to rescue the soul of their advisor. Getting there was easy, surviving it and each other is another thing entirely. I have a lot of issues with the storytelling choices that Kuang makes in her books, but I'm always impressed by the way she tackles really, really important themes. Jumping way ahead to October 7th, now here's one I'm incredibly excited for. Ellie Modesitt Jr. returns to the Gearpunk and Gaslamp world of the Grand Illusion trilogy with Legalist, which takes place 450 years before the events in those books. Now, it's the story of Dominic Isella, ancestor of Avril Isella, the heroine of the trilogy, grandson of a deposed king who becomes a legalist to support himself and eventually gets elected to the Imperial Council, where he is charged with drafting a new constitution to save the Imperium from itself, a task which earns him a lot of enemies. These novels have a level of depth and intricacy to their world building, especially the political landscape, that is just incredible to experience. Now, they're not for everybody, But if slow burn storytelling and deep narrative complexity is your thing, don't hesitate. Getting near the end, on October 21st, Tor releases Psychopomp and Circumstance, the first adult release by Ignite Award winner Eden Royce. Southern Gothic historical fantasy of a contentious funeral is what this is, set in an alternate Reconstruction era South. It's about a young black woman named Fee, who takes the job of planning her aunt's funeral as a way of defying her controlling mother. But when Fee travels to her late aunt's home, she discovers dark secrets that transcend the borders of life and death. And last, but by no means least, jumping way ahead to November 4th, Glenn Cook returns with the first volume in a new story arc in his venerable Black Company series, Lies Weeping. Now, summarizing the plot would probably sound incomprehensible to any readers who are not already fans, and I also have to say, Cook's previous relaunch of the series in 2018, Port of Shadows, didn't really light the world on fire, and yet the series still has a respectable reputation and is considered probably the foundational work of grimdark fantasy, so that alone earns it a look from those fans. And that is it at last. My final video for anticipated 2025 novels in science fiction, horror, and now fantasy. I know it took a long time for me to get these up. Sorry for that. You know, a lot of work in preparation clashing with a lot of life obligations, but I've enjoyed it, and I hope you found the results useful and informative and fun. So, thank you all for watching, and please hit that like button, share the video far and wide with all of your SFF reading friends, and if you missed the SFN horror episodes, click the links right there and watch them right now. If you'd like to support SFF180, you can do it in a few ways. You can click the thanks button underneath me for a one-time donation. You may have to click the three dots to find it, and you can also pitch into my Buy Me a Coffee page. All monies donated to the channel go to help me pay Matt Olson, my brilliant and gifted channel artist who creates all my incredible thumbnails and things for me. I'm very lucky to have him. You're not seeing AI when you look at my thumbnails. It's a real person doing real art, and it's been great working with him. So to any of you who choose to do that kind of support, thank you all very much. Otherwise, I want to thank all of you for being the very best viewers in all of BookTube, and until I see you all again very soon, stay safe, stay healthy, happy reading, and Happy New Year.